Welcome, everyone. This is the Your School Post-COVID webinar. And the whole idea with this is to give you some ideas about what is to come, because for a lot of people, there is a sense that what is to come is this. And I think it's actually a whole lot more like this. And over the next half hour or so, I'll share some ideas with you on that front. I remembered to turn on the captions, but I know myself and I have to have that reminder there in the Just Saying department. If you have seen me present before, you know that I am big into many more images than text. And so what you will see are images that are my own work or images that I have used from sites that legally allow their use. And I certainly cite the sources because one should. All right. So with that, I want to thank you for taking part in what we're doing today and pass out another few thanks as well as we jump into it. So a thank you to all the good folks at the Krause Center for Innovation at Foothill College in Los Altos Hills, California, and the great programs that they do with Merit and the new Ellie program and several others. And it is very much worth learning about if you don't already know about their work. Nice shout out to Richard Byrne of Free Tech for Teachers, my partner in crime on the Two EdTech Guys Take Questions and Share Cool Stuff webinar that we do twice a month. And if you're wondering what Two EdTech Guys Take Questions and Share Cool Stuff is about, you weren't paying attention to the title, just saying. There is also the thanks to my little nonprofit I've been running for 15 years, Next Vista for Learning at nextvista.org. And nextvista.org is a library of videos by and for teachers and students everywhere, free to use, free to contribute to, free to download from, all for a student audience, all screen content, my own little attempt to save the universe from ignorance, one creative video at a time. Ding. All right, so anyway, so that's me. So in getting into these things, we should start with the recognition that we've got good news and other news. And in talking about good news, there are a number of ways to think about it, because good news is always a little more nuanced than that. Bad news is always a little more nuanced than that. And so let's get into some of that. Thinking about the last year, one of the ways of thinking about how we've approached our work has been the mountain, the tsunami of questions that have hung over our heads. I'll make a number of references to my school, and what I mean by that is the school that I work with the most, that I'm kind of their outsourced instructional technology and leadership advisor guy, and so I've been doing that for about 11 years now, and love them. But I'll talk a little bit about some of the pieces of what we have been putting in place as a way of trying to help you see where this might be a good fit for your school as well. Now, some of the questions are questions that I am sure you are asking as well. So March of last year, how do we shift to online learning? This was our thing. And we actually jumped into the process about a week before we had to close, after learning that Japan had closed all its schools, and we believed, okay, it's only a matter of time. And so we actually got off to a pretty good start. And when we hit the ground running in the spring semester, it really helped us, not just figuring out what it was that we needed to do to keep the learning going, but also to be able to start the school year strong, because that was the next question we were dealing with, which was the uncertainty related to how to start with the fall. And so many people were in that space in the summer, right? Of, well, how are we going to start? Are we going to be in person? Are we going to be online? Is it going to be some, hybrid of the two? How's this work? And that set of questions hanging over our heads leads to a lot of stress about what it is we do. We made the decision fairly early on that we would start fully distance, in part because that just seemed to make sense based on what we knew from the health situation in the county, but also because that allowed us to plan going forward. Now, once we were into the fall semester, we started looking at this. Well, all right, at some point very soon, we're going to be able to bring some students back, physical distancing issues, dictating how many. And in doing that, we had to start planning. What's hybrid going to be? How are we going to plan for hybrid learning? And in doing that, we're in that space of, like, again, okay, we don't know what this is going to feel like, what it's going to mean for how we teach. And again, a set of questions about what it means to be thinking about what it is to come. This has been the case for so many teachers and so many schools for the last year. These questions about, what is to come? How do we deal with it? Well, the good news is that we we know, right? We know what to do now. We've been through this process of saying, okay, can we teach online? Yes. Right? Can we start the school year online? Yes. Can we switch to hybrid? You know, in our school, we ran a pilot program in November and December. You know, we did tons of discussion and PD ahead of that in order to kind of figure out what is it that we want to do to make that work for our students and our families. And in large part it has. So it's not as if the circumstances of a pandemic, as horrible and awful as they are, mean that we're going to get some new wrinkle that makes us wonder at a level of uncertainty in the same way we did for these other pieces. So trying to kind of be in that space of saying, hey, we're actually past the worst parts of this in so many ways. And we know what to do. Okay, there's been a new surge. We need to go fully distanced. We know how to do it, right? You know, everybody's vaccinated. We can come back to school or whatever that might look like. Well, we know how to do that. And there are some added questions about this as well, which give us the nuance of the other news. So the good news and the other news. And the other news is that the hope that many people have related to the idea of normal, that that's part of our past. It is behind us. And the question isn't whether we evolve, it is how. I'll make the case going forward that there is a very real need to do this, but I think that there are also a lot of things that attract us to the changes that have been part of this, because the lack of the normal to return to is in many ways good news for us. So we will explore quite a few of those pieces as we go. And one of the biggest pieces is that there are these things that we have wanted for our schools and our teachers for years and years and years. And the rather nasty, comfortable rut that keeps us from exploring some of those things, we've been exploring, we've been trying them out. We've been figuring out what kind of things we need to do. If you have wanted for your teachers to ramp up active learning strategies in class, if you wanted your teachers to ask tough questions about what truly is working for students, if wanted teachers to be more flexible about how they assess what students know, we've been experiencing it, right? And hopefully your teachers are able to bring a number of different things to the table with regard to how that can work in the school as you craft it to be part of what it can do for more students going forward as well. I think of a buddy who for many months was in a horrible situation. It was incredibly stressful for him. He lost, say, 30 to 40 pounds over that time frame. And so, yeah, a lot of what we've done is really kind of like a stress-induced weight loss. It was horrible. It's been a very difficult thing. And yet there are pluses on the other side. And it's to those pluses that we'll turn next, because understanding what those are and why they're important allow us to begin putting together the plan for how we deal with what we're going to do going forward. All right, so understanding that we have now tried these different things, we have teachers that are ready. We have teachers who are ready to bring new things to their students. For those students who have needed something different, we have many more possibilities in front of us than we've had before. And for that, let's talk in some detail about who we're talking about. Because the situation now, the situation that we have, there are several elements I want to highlight. The first is that it is very real that there are students who have been struggling as a result of switches to online learning. Obviously, age differences play a big part in this. The younger the student, the harder it is for online learning to be effective when the parents are not already bought into the idea that they're a part of it. And so forcing this upon families has been really challenging in a lot of different settings. And I think everybody understands that. But we don't spend as much time reading in stories that you find in the press and other places, right, about the students who are thriving, because there are students who are thriving right now. Why are they thriving? Well, especially if you get up into the older grades, the middle and high school, the social dynamics of secondary school in many places are such that kids actually found more barriers in person than they did when they were doing things online. Now, how many are we talking about? Heaven knows. But let's just assume for our purposes that we're talking about, say, 10 to 20% of our students. And what we did in our school is we said, can we learn from the students who are doing well? Can we learn from students who are dealing with different things, what it is that they would keep? That was one of our questions that we started bringing to our students in the last couple of weeks. Thinking about your learning, students, thinking about your learning under like our distance learning systems, right? When we go back to being able to pack a classroom, what would you like to keep from the different things we've done? And so we've been gathering things on that. I picked out 3 quotes that I thought were kind of interesting, one for one reason or another. But for some students, this has been an opportunity to actually do more work with others. So, a highly traditional educational system really just says, did you learn this? Check. Okay, did you do this? Check. Have you turned these things in? Check. And the more that you get the opportunity to really connect with somebody else, in the class that I co-teach, we have kids meeting on their own afterwards. They'll say, all right, for your homework for this coming week, one of the things that we're going to have you do is you guys find a time to meet together and to talk about this, this, and this. And they can. And that flexibility, a theme that came up again and again and again, became very important. Another piece is flexibility regarding time. We have known for years and years that a mile-wide curriculum that's an inch deep is only doing us so good. And it's really the much more interesting moments that students have that they tend to really, really learn from. And so with having an online instruction system set so that we might have fewer contact hours, we are now in a space of saying, what are the most important pieces? What can I trim from all of this? Because the more that can be trimmed, the more likely that what was going on before was all of the extra was crowding out time that could have been devoted to deeper and deeper understanding of the core concepts. Now, you wouldn't extend that logic to the point of therefore only meet once or anything like that. But what you would want to do is say, all right, can we arrange our schedules and arrange time such that we're really zeroing in on the things that are most important, and that works effectively with the students? This too, this discussion of time is really much more about flexibility. Again, the kids keep coming up with this again and again. We want more flexibility when we go back. Now, additionally, there is simply thinking about struggling and thriving from the standpoint of, all right, if we have 10 to 20% of our students thriving in the environment that we've got, if that's the case, then we need to begin thinking about what it is school will be like for them when we are past COVID. So let's come back to that idea as we hit after we've hit a few more ideas about what's going on at the moment. We have learned, for example, that equity is hard work. This has come up in the last year in multiple ways that don't need to be explained, right? I mean, it clearly is important that we find ways to address a divide that has existed for a long time. We've often thought, okay, well, we've got kids who have access and have things at home. We have kids that don't. We can do this and this and this for them, but we only tried this much. And for a lot of schools, they went from this much to this much because they had to. All right, can we talk to the cable companies and the cell phone companies about hotspots for kids that need them? Do we have devices that we can send home with kids so that they have access to the systems we're using to connect and run our classes? This means that in addition to simply being able to do what we're supposed to do, that we are now beginning to think about what it is that kids can do, given that we can assume that they have this connection if the school went to the trouble of bringing things to that point. And I think it is an issue of going to the trouble, because back in the spring, when some districts said, okay, well, we know some portion of our kids don't have this, so no damage done, right? If you don't, if you don't do anything and you can still keep your grade from early March, you can't be hurt by this. And that came from a point of a good heart, right? Well, we don't want to penalize kids for not having access. Well, of course, the message that hey, you don't actually have to do anything and it won't hurt your grade was one that a lot of students said, oh, really? Great, we'll see you later. All right, and that's not too like so much of a surprise, really. Still, when we think about that as a learning experience, we stop and we say the hard work is making sure kids do have access, because we need for kids to be able to get into a space where they can try the new kinds of technologies to work with information in important and cutting edge ways. Because if you say that in your district we're going to be equitable by having students slow down to this point, you have created an inequity with other districts and schools where they are going to the trouble of making sure that people have this access. Now that's not anything too surprising. Fair enough. We certainly understand better now that there are loads of students who come from backgrounds with low resources. A lot of students of color in our society have had these divide issues haunting them for years and years and years. And now, knowing that we need to address them might mean that we are better positioned to craft a better learning experience for more kids going forward. All right, let's keep working. The need for improvement is something we've understood for a long time. When I work with schools and teacher audiences, I often ask the question, who here is so good at what you do that there is no room for improvement? Anybody? Right? Now, people chuckle, but the truth is that knowing that we can all improve means that we're in a different space for trying out different kinds of improvement. And so articulating that can be quite useful. So you have people on your team, right, who are people who look for silver linings, right? They see challenges and they look for possibilities in it. I understand that you also have people who are of the impression that, behind every silver lining, there's a dark cloud. I mean, those people are out there too, fair enough. However, there are incentives for anybody to stop and say, hey, that's important to me, whether it's saving time or the joy of reaching the next kid or whatever it may be. But the exhaustion that's been a part of the adjustments of the last year mean that for a lot of people, there's been a lot of progress. So many teachers have learned so much in the last year. I would argue that the last year has seen more embrace and exploration with educational technology than any year ever. And I don't think that that's a particularly profound thing to say, right? Because we've had to. So when we're in that space, what's the result? Well, one of my teachers said recently, I'm more organized than I've ever been, because he's had to be. And so now, well, okay, how do we build on that? If it was okay to kind of get through the year not being particularly organized before, what opportunities were lost as a result of that? So let's use what is now a part of our circumstances to make things a lot better, because in essence, in a lot of settings, a simplistic satisfaction with low engagement instruction leads to classroom management problems, mediocrity, whether that's academic mediocrity for kids or professional mediocrity for adults. That's very much real when we're not pushing ourselves, and we've had to push ourselves. There's essentially less room to be bad at what we do. That's good for us, because that means in addressing these things, we're going to be reaching more kids. That embrace of the opportunity to improve and knowing that we all can, and just finding the fun ways to do it is part of how to make this a better experience for everybody. Now, another thing that we have been able to do for years and years, but only a few were doing, comes through using these technologies that have been a part of our systems and saying, how do we now tap connections and talents in new ways? Because when you think about connections, I mean, okay, granted, Zoom fatigue is a real thing. We all get into that space where like, kind of tired of Zoom. Fair, but what is now possible? Well, in the class that I co-teach, we have had speakers from Hong Kong and Canada and Tanzania and Germany. We had a guy from England who was a minister of Parliament talk to our students just a few months back. And why do we do this? Because we can. Right? Because it makes sense now to do these things. And for lots of teachers, there's kind of a, well, sure, I could do that, because there's nothing technical standing in the way. We know how to send a Zoom link to somebody. If that somebody is not, say, down the street, but instead, in another country and on another continent, why not? If you just say, hey, let's find a time for you to connect with the class and tell about this thing that's happening in your community. Those are really powerful moments where we vary the voice for what students experience. A lot of students will say about school's boring, it's boring, right? And in truth, they're lying. They don't believe that at all. They think school is interesting. They like being around their friends, right? They like being around caring, stable adults, because not all of them have it at home. They like being around a certain amount of structure because they don't all have that at home. But instead, their problem is a limited vocabulary. The real thing they meant to say was school is predictable. And that seems boring to them, that some of their classes are too predictable. But when we bring other voices into play, using these technologies that have been a part of what we've been doing for the last year, now things get more and more interesting. Now we create the conditions under which a kid might say, tell me more about that. I'm really interested in that. You know, I'm doing this over here. Can we bring those two together? Those kinds of moments of being more flexible about how we ask students to show their mastery of content and to expand on strengths that we might have been, you know, developing for decades, but now are using technology to allow to reach more kids. That's a powerful moment. Now, what does this mean for us going forward? What do you do now in order to be ready for what your school can be in the future? I would say that the most important suggestion I have is create a team. All right, you need a team that brainstorms. This is a group of people that essentially come together and say, what do we want to see happen? And in doing that, they're going to come up with some ideas. Some of those ideas are going to be crazy ideas. And you as a leader need to be okay with the idea of crazy ideas. You think, oh, I don't know, if we don't do it, they'll be upset. No. Think a little bit more creatively about this stuff, because they're going to come up with crazy ideas that address real problems. So for example, it may be that this is what your staff room looks like. Yeah, inspiring? Not really. And maybe one of your people says something like, I've got an idea. Let's completely rebuild the staff room so that it looks like this place. I'm thinking that's not a bad idea, right? There's something kind of cool about the idea of a wildly hip coffee place that becomes more the vibe of your staff room. And you're thinking to yourself, there's no way, right? There's no way we're going to be able to do that. No way in the next few months, maybe in the next couple of years. But how do you start? Well, how hard is it to get gourmet coffee for your teachers once a month? You know, have everybody there. I mean, you know, be able to come by the staff room, whether they teach or not, and to pick up some really good coffee because you had it brought in, and you know, they're just like, hey, check it out, and they can try some different flavors and talk about those things together and things like that. Why not do that? How hard is that? And the answer is not particularly hard. So the crazy ideas are really that which allow you to say, what would be a step? What would be a step that allow us to get more and more into our own possibilities as a team, so that it isn't just a matter of doing what we've always done. There are too many reasons that we want to be able to explore things in new ways. So you go with kind of the how might we approach of design thinking as we think about this. How might we make this happen? How might we move in the direction of? And if you're doing a good job of bringing a team together, they're going to start coming up with a lot of different ideas. So at the school where I am, we call our group the R&D team. And we've got some ideas. We've got actually like several dozen of them that we brought together. Earlier this semester, I addressed the staff and said, anybody who wants to be on the R&D team, join in, totally fine. We're going to be meeting about once every 2 weeks, and we'll be building the plane as we fly it. But love to have your input. So we started getting together to talk about what if, how might we? And just some of the ideas that were part of this, right? Just ideas that we've come up with. Maybe they're useful to you. Things like, all right, can we offer classes at other times? Can we offer little seminars to get kids more and more into the idea of it? That's something I'd like to learn. Can we build a project center so that the students have a place to go to say, this is what I'm trying to make happen. And what I want to do is I want to be able to add this to it. And somebody can say, try this as well. And even cooler if you add that, so that kids have that chance to work on these kinds of things with people who are ready to engage them and help them ramp up their academic game as they go through it. We ask about tech-enabled service to others. Oh, you know, with the pandemic, and we haven't been able to go out and volunteer at the thing. Look, there are seniors who are feeling exceptionally lonely at this time because, you know, they can't see their friends or something like this. Maybe there was an issue of folks coming to see them, you know, even before the pandemic. And now we can use these kinds of technologies to have groups of kids say, all right, we're going to connect and we're going to check in with these folks, and we're going to be part of the solution to a problem of loneliness in our society for seniors. Why not, right? And that's just one of the many pieces that we've begun to explore, trying to say, how do we use technology to make the service that we do all the more distinctive at the school? We ask about information literacy passion projects, right? So if there's something you're really into as a student, can you then begin to to explore how to make that something you can bring to your community as a suggestion, a proposal, a possibility. And in so doing, can you get to know the underlying information that supports the idea? Can you really say, I am ramping up my academic game to be able to say these sources are valid for these reasons, and I question these things for these reasons, but I think they point to this this possibility for that reason. Getting kids to really begin to explore what it means to be information literate is of clear value in our country, and beginning to think about that from the standpoint of, let's tie that into their combining the things that they're really passionate about with stuff that we want them to do as a part of their learning anyway. We even had the idea of like a teacher exchange. What if we start working more with schools in other countries, and one of their teachers comes and spends a few weeks with us, and we send one of our teachers over there to spend a few weeks with them? Why not? A lot of the expense of doing something like that is covered through having a system of saying, hey, you know, when you come over, we've got, you know, this family is going to open up a room for you to stay. You know, there's just a lot that's possible, and was possible even before the pandemic, but we're much more easily able to make and build upon those connections now, which is part of the difference that we now have. All of these things that we have done before and that we have done over the last year need to become the kinds of stories that we share with the community, that we really begin to see the PR and PD value of telling our stories more and more effectively. The technologies for telling your stories have just become easier and easier and easier. I worked with a great group from San Benito County just a couple of days ago about telling stories through Adobe Spark. Very simple little tool for being able to put together a good looking little video to share, so that people might say, hey, tell me more about that thing at your school. Hey, you know, we might be able to help you with that. Those kinds of moments are important for trying to get a community engaged in learning. Now, we've talked a lot about the carrots, and we need to talk a little bit about the sticks. Because if we're thinking about what it means for a school to embrace the idea of bringing new things to the students, why do we do that? In part because the same technologies that make it easy to do all these things make it easy for us to have schools that offer these things in a way that maybe have not been available to you before. A lot of online learning pre-COVID, it was really glorified correspondence courses. There are exceptions, of course, but by and large, not particularly interesting stuff. And yet, we've had this massive expansion of people who are ready to do really interesting things with online instruction. So why wouldn't schools be established where people are beginning to ask these questions of each other? Can we offer this? Can we offer that? Can we make it a part of their experience that they have this kind of flexibility, and they're able to connect with people in all sorts of different places and to pursue projects in all sorts of interesting ways? Once that becomes available, and we're only a few years off of it, what is it that's going to hold that 10 to 20% that we talked about at your school? You do have some advantages. You've got the connections, the personal connections that come from really addressing the SEL issues that students face in any community, to be that place where students learn to feel comfortable and excited about their own possibilities. If you're doing that well, that's a huge advantage your school has. But you also want to begin saying, we can offer some of the same things that some new online school might be able to offer. We should make these things a part of what we offer to our students and offer to our people to get excited about doing, because that's a reality now. Your relevance as a school is going to depend on your ability to compete with schools that are on the horizon, the near horizon. And so as we think about these things, we want to be in that space of let's build what we can, because now we know how. So when we think about being ready, the idea of being ready, that really comes from going through the fire together, right? You know, having a bunch of experiences that allow us to say, wow, that was really, really hard, but look what we learned. We're ready. We're ready for that. Teachers are by and large ready. And if they're not, they at least know that they probably shouldn't whine about it too much, because a lot of people around them are ready. That's real. So as you look at these things for your school, if I can be of help to you, feel free to reach out to me. You can go to nextvista.org. There's a little contact link at the top. I'll give you some more contact info at the top. A little bit about what we do real quick. The library has videos about all kinds of things: academic topics, communities, service to others, learning English, careers videos, advice for teens, not known for listening to advice, which is why we put that set together. And the whole piece is that it's all free and all ad free. It's out there to help. And so if any of that is of interest to you, please let me know. We run contests where we ask kids to give us kids and teachers to give us short explanations that will allow others to go, oh, that's how that works. We run contests about telling the stories of those who serve their communities. And I hope that that's something you'll take a look at as a part of what we do. My email address is rh@nextvista.org. The library is at nextvista.org. There's loads and loads of resources, nextvista.org/resources, including one called Sources of Inspiration. And if you find that you're just in the exhaustion of dealing with everything we deal with, you just need some beautiful, beautiful stories about the best of who we are. Dozens and dozens and dozens on that page. Feel free to take a look. The 5-day teacher challenge sounds a little bit like some kind of a cleanse, but what it is really is a set of blog posts allowing teachers to say, let's take a look at this together. Here are 2 options. You take that one, I'll take that one, and then let's talk about it. And it's just a tool for getting better as a teacher. Feel free to use those things. That's out there and free as well on my blog at rushtonh.com, rushtonh.com/5 day. And then finally, my newsletter, nextvista.org/newsletter. And I hope you'll sign up. There are loads of good ideas that we share and tons of freebies, things you might want to watch or read or try, and we put it out once a month. So feel free to give it a look. I am going to finish off our recording, but I will stay on for anybody who has questions. So as I finish the newsletter every month, I will finish this webinar with the same thought now, which is this: may you inspire and be inspired each and every day. Thank you so much for joining.